I wanted to get some of your thoughts, Way, about the reports that are out about the proposed Saturday night show that AEW looks to be in the midst of finalizing. Andrew Zarian has done a lot of reporting on this story, and it's looking like tentative plans are for the Saturday show to debut sometime in June with a potential slot of 8 to 10 Eastern on Saturday nights, and with the working title of Collision. It's worth noting that in May the 17th, Warner Brothers Discovery will be holding their upfronts, and this could be something that they're waiting for closer to or around that time to release this information. But the key being that this is a show that could also serve not just 2 hours more of television, which one would theorize would be in addition to the deal they currently have with Warner Brothers Discovery, and that would be a separate rights fee that they're getting for this show, but also a place that could house CM Punk. And it seems like this could be, at first, it was described by Andrew Zarian as a bit of a soft brand split, but it might be more defined than just a soft brand split. We will see. A lot of balls are in the air here, but just looking at the big picture, the idea of this show, Way, this would be adding to AEW essentially having a show out pretty much every night of the week, with the addition of Ring of Honor on Thursdays and then this on Saturdays, which is a very difficult night when you look at the competition in sports. Competition once a month from WWE, every week from UFC. There's going to be preemptions in there. What do you feel about this idea, especially if it's centered around Punk as the key star of getting this off the ground?
Right. Yeah. Well, from the beginning, we know the reason why Tony Khan took an interest in starting a professional wrestling promotion was because of the massive TV rights fees that were being, paid to the WWE. And I think expansion is always going to be something he's looking at. And CM Punk, this entire story with him and the Elite, it's certainly unfortunate, but there's money to be made. And when there's money to be made, you think about what your options are. And one of the options that might satisfy the locker room, might satisfy Punk, might satisfy the Elite, is to separate him. And in the same process, can you sell another product? Can you create a new product out of this controversy, out of this, disagreement between the rosters? It's not ideal. I don't think you ever want to give anybody this much power to, say like, hey, we're going to create a show just for you. But I don't think this is just creating a show just for a person.
It would seem like this is a larger idea that it helps in terms of it being like I don't think they're going to, hey, how can we save CM Punk and the situation? It's more so this is a chance we have for a new show, and it gives, if we're going to be adding a second night of tapings, we can look at it this way as an avenue for a Punk.
And if you're going to pick a franchise, draw for that particular show, Punk is really your best bet. He's look what he did for that, for a second edition of Rampage. If people are going to have any chance of making an effort to stay up for a Saturday, primetime show or be around for a Saturday primetime show, it's with a lead like Punk. So for the health of AEW, I think this is wonderful. What it means, though, for, I think, consumption of some of their other products, I really do feel like, Dark and Elevation at this point, I question really what the benefit is, besides maybe, having developmental, maybe creating, like a library that's a lot deeper for future, maybe streaming purposes or whatever. But I see maybe
sort of the function of Ring of Honor.
Well, that's the thing too. What becomes a Ring of Honor? And what becomes a Rampage? I think the prestige of those brands are going to be even lesser unless they find specific purposes for their existence. What exactly, WWE is able to get away with having a Raw, having a SmackDown, and having an NXT, with NXT serving a very specific purpose. And maybe that's what Ring of Honor will eventually become, more of your, genuine sort of quote unquote developmental brand.
Well, you need the Saturday show to be a Dynamite. Like, that's what you need this show to be. And if that means your ROH becomes your NXT, for lack of a better comparison, Rampage certainly feels like a show that I don't know if that inspires your confidence of them being able to, despite how deep this roster is, of expanding that demand to yet another night of the week, which is a very hard night to draw that audience in. Like, you are talking about a bit of a younger audience for AEW. We've talked about the handicaps of running on Friday night. Saturday night is going to present that as well. And it also becomes the question of like what this roster again, there's so many questions about this, but the roster makeup, if a CM Punk goes down again, like what becomes of that Saturday night show? Is it enough that it's sustainable? Like, you can always mix and match different people, but how many people on that roster would you have the confidence can carry a flagship show? And there's not even a guarantee, Punk, that X amount of months into this, that Saturday night show will have the same level of interest. Like, they have a clear number one show that is pretty must see if you're an AEW fan. And the rest of the programming, from Battle of the Belts to Rampage and ROH, that we have seen now a month or so in, it's sort of watch at your leisure. But is it something that if I miss it, I'm frantically searching for it? I don't think it has that urgency, and you need a show that has urgency.
Agreed. I think they've been trying to, maybe if we're talking soft, brand split, that to me is kind of what Ring of Honor has been an experiment in doing, separating guys where you might only see wrestle on an ROH. I don't think you can, save a Castagnoli, save an Eddie Kingston, save a Samoa Joe for ROH if you're going to go ahead with these two distinct rosters. You're going to need your all-star cast on both Dynamite and on the Saturday show. So I don't know if ROH, is going to it'll probably be hurt by this, but it's something that they can sacrifice, honestly, and maybe turn that more into your developmental brand.
Yeah, I think that there is a way that all of this can work. I do feel that it's only going to add to the discussion point about Tony Khan's plate and being able to delegate some of the booking responsibilities. I would not, just looking at how much he has taken on by himself on the booking direction, I wouldn't see him handing the Saturday show off to anyone. But at that point, should he be someone that has to sit down and write 4 weeks of Ring of Honor television when they go to Universal Studios? Whatever becomes of Rampage, like, it's very hard to imagine in any of these scenarios that Rampage still becomes a show that, I mean, just to maintain its current level, I think that's going to be really challenging unless they have an ace up their sleeve of something to make Friday unique. And asking your audience to stay home Friday and Saturday, even to DVR the show and watch it the next day, man, there's only so much time.
Agreed. I'd be curious to see if he addresses it at all, because I don't think he has addressed, maybe criticisms of Rampage for like the past year. I would say it still very much feels like a show that you can skip unless you really wanted to see certain stars.
But let's also not understate the fact that Warner Brothers Discovery, like, if you are going forward and greenlighting another 2 hours, and you're looking at, they didn't go for Ring of Honor, but the idea of currently with All Access, you have 3 hours on Wednesday nights, you have an hour on Friday night, you have potentially 2 hours on Saturday. Wrestling is a huge part of the footprint now of TNT and to a lesser degree TBS, and it would only serve that to lose this property would be how much you would have to new content you would have to create to fill these gaps that pro wrestling provides you on a weekly basis. It would seem to me that Warner Brothers Discovery understands the value this particular brand of wrestling brings to them, even though the ROH brand was not something that they were looking at. And we go back to that interview a while ago about more out of the ring content, and thus Ring of Honor did not find its way onto the schedule, but this looks to be a 2-hour in-ring show that is not named Ring of Honor that Tony Khan was trying to shop months ago.
Well, I think simply beyond wanting more wrestling content, they probably want maybe a certain ownership of the branding. If they're like not maybe literally, I have no idea what the corporate makeup of AEW's ownership is beyond like Tony Khan and his father being heavily involved. But would they want to promote another brand watered down, potentially maybe sort of like the wrestling, I guess, identity of TBS or TNT with this sort of extra thing that, people who aren't you and I casual viewers might not necessarily know about. And what is structurally, like corporately, like what is the difference between a Ring of Honor and an AEW? It's owned by Tony Khan, separate from whatever sort of like structure he has with AEW. So that might, be part of the reason as well. But it could just simply be as simple as like, hey, we want to invest in the AEW brand and not whatever else you're, trying to create over there.
Last one on this. What do you think about Saturday night? Like, we know Tony Khan's
ideal. It never is ideal, especially when you've got, UFC competition. You've got, I'm sure, other sports that
WWE once a month.
Yeah, not ideal. But if you're TBS, TNT, maybe it's the one night of the week that you can offer, for this extra professional wrestling. Mm-hmm. Like, do they have a hang up with like giving pro wrestling another primetime weekday slot? Maybe. But if you're Tony Khan, you kind of take what you can get.
If you're Tony Khan, like, he has made it clear he does not want to run against the NFL, and that takes out Monday, that takes out Thursday, and that takes out Sunday. Like, there's only so many nights of the week. If you take Tony Khan at that face value, that he does not want those nights, and who's to say he'd even be offered those Monday makes no sense. I would not be running on Monday nights, but like, there's only so many. But Saturday that's a tough night. It's a very, very tough night, not just for sports, but your direct competitors. When you are running, WWE, it's going to be a lot of Saturdays that they run against, not to mention, like, every month you're looking at probably a WWE show, unless they do the odd Sunday, and you're definitely going against the UFC every Saturday. Not the fight nights, but which you are, but the pay-per-views, that to me, they're the big fights. It's just a lot that it's
not ideal. Clearly, like, I don't think it would, be anybody's first choice to run any sort of like weekly professional wrestling product. But man, if they're going to pay you for it, if it's your foot in the door to establish whatever the show is going to be called, so that one day you can move it to a different day, either with Warner, or you could sell it to another network, the way Raw and SmackDown are on different networks, like, do it. Why not? So I think from a business perspective, like, it makes a whole lot of sense why he would be going this way. And, maybe there's an added benefit of being able to work a CM Punk back into your system as well.